What's going on, guys? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today I'm checking out the BladeHQ exclusive version of the Fox Knives Radius. And before I get into the knife itself, I had originally seen this over on Tri-State EDC's channel. I think during a live maybe. It might have been a video dedicated to it, but I'm pretty sure he was just fidgeting it with it on a live. And I checked it out online, and I thought it was just kind of a premium version, a kind of copycat of the Camillus Mini Cuda. Which is the super old knife. This is probably like, this version isn't necessarily super old, but it's been around probably for 20 years or so, maybe more. And it's a budget knife, 25 bucks on Amazon. I think they used to be a little bit cheaper when I first found out about them, but it's on this kind of track system. And it has this thumb stud here that you can just kind of press up. It's got a pretty strong detent, so once you get it past that detent, it really flies open. And it's got a liner lock, and so super fidgety, pretty drop sheddy, which is nice. And just a fun knife overall. So I thought it was just kind of a premium version of that, which would have been cool because I love this knife. But I was kind of surprised that it was winning awards for innovation and knife of the year when it was just a copycat of this, but that's actually not the case. This is quite a bit different. I feel like it probably took some inspiration from here. I can't say for sure if they're even aware of this knife, but I would assume they are, and it took some inspiration from there, but they made their own changes and ended up being a pretty cool knife. But I didn't pick it up at the time because it was relatively pricey. The original version of the Radius I think is like $208, $209. But most of the versions that were in stock were titanium handle M390 blade and $400, $500, all the way up to $1,200. And so didn't want to, I was curious, but didn't want to pay that much for it. But then the BladeHQ exclusive version came out, and they've done exclusives before. I just wasn't aware of the knife at the time, so didn't grab them, obviously. But this one came out for 150 bucks. It's M390 steel with natural G10 scales. And left it in the pouch just because I like this pouch a little bit. It has the Radius logo on here, the Fox Knives logo with the Radius and the Italian flag colors. But this is actually a removable patch, which is pretty cool. There's some other ones that do that. I know that I recently got the Demco 80-20.5 and it had a similar thing, but a lot of brands have it embroidered on there. So it's nice that you can remove this and use it for a different knife and put your own patches on there, or take this patch and put it on a different pouch or bag and use it for whatever you want. And the other interesting thing about this pouch is that it actually has some belt loops on here, so you could belt carry it in this pouch. It's a little bit bulky and kind of weird. I don't know. Probably won't use it for that, but it's interesting that you have that option. But onto the knife itself. So as you can see, it looks a little similar to the Camillus Mini Cuda in that they both have this track system, which is clearly why I thought they were similar. And to be fair, they're somewhat similar, but the major difference is pressing up on this doesn't do anything at all. And actually, even if you two-hand pinch and try and pull, this is locked in there. So the lock actually functions to keep it closed as well as keep it open. But the big difference besides on the track is that this is actually a push button. So it's a button lock, and you press that and then you're able to slide it and then press it again to close it. And so unlike the other one, which is a liner lock, this one is a button lock, and you just slide it along that trail or that path. And then same thing for deployment. So pressing it up doesn't do anything at all. You actually have to press inwards and then upwards, and it'll swing along that path. And so this is also a super fidgety knife, but a different type of fidget. The Camillus Mini Cuda I feel like flies out. This one's a little bit slower. I mean, it goes about as fast as you can move your thumb, but because you're not fighting a detent, once you press that button, it's just kind of whatever speed you're able to slide your thumb. So that was an interesting thing. It's very, very different. Obviously the liner lock isn't here because you have the button lock, and it feels like a very different knife, even though they look very, very similar. The knife itself, I mentioned already before I pulled it out of the pouch, natural Jade G10 scales, which is nice if you want to dye them. That's definitely an option. There's definitely videos out there. Look up like RIT dyeing if you're interested in checking that out. But definitely an option. You can dye it mostly darker colors. Obviously you can't lighten it, but you can darken it. The blade is a black DLC coated M390, 2.875 inch drop point, about 0.125 inches thick at the the base of the spine obviously tapers down a little bit towards the tip. And handle length is 4.5 inches, bringing the total length to 7.25 inches, and it weighs in at 3.7 ounces, so not light, but not super heavy either. I guess the only complaint I have about this knife, well, that's not true, I have a few. They're pretty minor for the most part, besides this first one, which is it's not the most comfortable because this radius locking system is a little bit bulky. So you have like this big round section for the first inch or so of the handle. And so even though it's a 4.5 inch handle, which is perfect length, really, it's a decent length for a full 4-finger grip, the 4-finger grip on this is extremely tight and pretty far back from the blade. So depending on what you're doing, if you need a lot of leverage, you're pretty far back from the blade, so you're really only getting leverage from the tip of your thumb, whereas if you were choked up a little more, you could obviously get a lot more leverage on that. And so I don't think there's anything they can do about that because of how bulky this locking system is. Aside from maybe making the entire thing thicker, which also might not be the most comfortable, but yeah, not a lot they can do, unfortunately, there. But it does make it for a pretty compact 4-finger grip. You still get it, but definitely feels a little bit squeezed. Not the worst thing in the world, but that's probably my only major gripe. Minor gripes is the pocket clip. I don't love it. Wire pocket clips definitely aren't for me. Not a big clip person in general, but wire pocket clips in particular are not my favorite, aesthetically at least. And then that this back spacer sticks out a little bit. I wish it were flush with the scales. Definitely could have been. It's definitely a design choice for aesthetics, probably to kind of tie everything together a little bit, but for me, this doesn't work so much. So those are my only real kind of gripes. The only major one, again, being that grip, and it works for light cutting if you're doing the types of things I typically do with a knife, which are opening packages, breaking down boxes, cutting threads, or small bits of rope. So I'm not doing anything major with it, but if I were doing a lot of cutting, say I had 100 boxes to break down and I was going to be cutting for an hour, I definitely wouldn't choose this knife just because of that grip. It's not great, and even the wire pocket clip sticks up a little bit into the fingers. I'll probably end up removing it, honestly. That pocket clip is not reversible also, which makes sense for this knife. Obviously, it would be preferential if all knives had reversible pocket clips for those left-handers, but this knife in particular does not work for left-handers. Not a complaint for me because I'm not left-handed, but if you are left-handed, there's basically no way to deploy it with your left hand. In theory, you could, I don't know, use your pointer finger. I can't use my pointer finger, there we go. With two hands I can. In theory, you could use your pointer finger. Maybe someone who's left-handed would have better dexterity than I do in their left hand and be able to do that. But it doesn't feel good. I don't think that's like really a feasible option. So your best bet is probably to deploy it with your right hand and then switch over to your left. And so not a great left-handed knife. I don't know if they sell a left-handed version, but for this knife in particular, it would definitely make sense for them to have a left-handed version. But again, didn't really research it. I'm right-handed, so did not see any listed on any of the sites I looked on, but that doesn't necessarily mean they don't exist. But overall, cool knife, made in Italy. Glad I checked it out. It's different than I expected. Obviously, I was expecting this, which is also cool, also fidgety, but I'm glad it was a little bit different because, you know, I was like, how is this innovative? I've had this knife for probably 5 years, and I have known about this knife for much longer than that. How is it innovative? And the innovation really is that button lock within the path, and they feel very different despite looking very similar. So really glad I checked it out, but let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Fox Radius, if you've handled one, how you like it as far as a deployment method or a locking mechanism. I think they've actually come out with at least one other model that uses this Radius system. It's not called the Radius, so I'm not sure how often they're going to be using that. I'm sure they've got patents on it at this point. And this one's probably out of patent, so other companies in theory could use this version, but not necessarily this version. But I think they'll probably release some other version of knives with the same Radius system. Obviously, they developed it. They want to take advantage of it, and so hopefully we'll see some other knives and cool configurations come out from that, and hopefully they're able to figure out a way around maybe getting this a little bit more compact. I'm not sure how much more compact they can get, but getting a little bit more compact so you can get a more comfortable grip on the knife. Obviously you can get up here on the kind of like rounded part, but you're exposing yourself to that blade, so when you're cutting you're probably going to roll into your finger, so I wouldn't recommend that. But again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, hope you have a great one. Take care.